Thank you for joining me tonight for my event to discuss the impacts of this pandemic on working women across America. My name is Congresswoman Robin Kelly, and I proudly represent the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois, including South Chicago, the South Suburbs, and all of Kankakee County. I am looking forward to our discussion tonight, so I promise I'll be brief. Before I introduce our wonderful panelists with us this evening, I wanted to say a few words about the dire employment and financial issues facing women across our district and across the country. Women made history last year working tirelessly to keep our country afloat, all while also caring for their families. Not only are women serving on the front lines of the pandemic, with 3/4 of healthcare workers and teachers being women, but women are also having to help their families navigate online learning, along with a host of other responsibilities. We are facing a She-Cession with 2.3 million women no longer in the workforce since the start of the pandemic, a 33-year low in women's labor force participation. Of the 2.3 million women who have been forced to leave the workforce entirely, nearly 1 million were working mothers, and the statistics are even worse for women of color. Families are continuing to suffer the economic impact and fallout of the pandemic. We now have passed several relief measures in Congress, including President Biden's American Rescue Plan. Hallelujah. This plan will provide direct stimulus payments, child care relief, and food assistance, but unfortunately, it will still not be enough to mitigate the long-term financial impacts of COVID. Many of these issues, especially when it comes to the intersection of gender and racial equity issues in the workforce, will not be resolved overnight. Just last week, I joined my congressional caucus on Black women and girls. I joined my co-chairs in unveiling our report on Black women and girls, which we have worked tirelessly on for the past year. This report is the first ever of its kind, and it explains some of the most pressing issues facing Black women and girls in America, a few of which being financial wellness, empowerment, and health equity. Our report not only explains the issues, but offers policy recommendations we know will go a long way in addressing some of these disparities and problems. We know that women who have lost their jobs during this pandemic will not find new ones overnight. And we know that our nation has a long road ahead of us in providing better workforce and economic opportunities for women, especially for women of color. That is why I've asked our panelists here this evening to discuss what we all can do to help women get back to work and out from under the financial burden of this pandemic. I want to introduce you to our panelists, and I want to thank all of you so much. We have Sharita Evans, President and CEO of Women Employed, an organization which pursues equity for women in the workforce by effecting policy change, expanding access to educational opportunities, and advocating for fair and inclusive workplaces so that all women, families, and communities thrive. We have Felicia Davis, President and CEO of the Chicago Foundation for Women, which is an organization which works for women and girls who lack economic security and opportunity, freedom from violence, and equitable access to health care and services. And Ms. Davis is one of our authors for our report in Black Women and Girls. And joining us a little bit later, we will have Karen Norrington Reeves, CEO of Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, which is the largest public workforce development in the nation and combines federal and philanthropic resources to provide comprehensive workforce development services to employers and job seekers. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time for joining us here this evening to provide your expertise and answer our questions. Now I'm going to turn it over to my staff, April, to get us started. So thank you so much again.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Kelly. First, I want to say Happy International Women's Day to everyone. Congresswoman Kelly, our panelists, Sharita Ellens, Felicia Davis, and Karen Norrington Reeves, who will be joining us later at 6 p.m., as the Congresswoman said. And to everyone else joining us this evening, welcome to Congresswoman Kelly and the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls Women's History Month event, She-Cession, the impact of a pandemic recession on women. Some of you out there may be asking, what is a she-session? I have been practicing this word all weekend to make sure I don't mess up. So a she-session is an economic recession, but when the majority of people losing their jobs are women, like the man session in 2008, when the majority of men lost their jobs. This she-session was termed by C. Nicole Mason, President and Chief Executive of the Institute for Women's Policy Research, last year after in April of 2020, women accounted for 55% of the 20.5 million jobs lost, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, raising the unemployment rate for adult women to about 15% from the low 3.1% just 2 months ago in February. So in comparison, the unemployment rate for adult men was just 13%, and we were at a higher rate at 55%. So women of color fare worse, a lot worse unemployment rates for Black women at 16.4%, Hispanic at 20.2%. I want to make this point that this is the second She-Cession forum for you ladies. The first one was on February 3rd, which is Rising Above the She-Cession, Concrete Steps to Ensure Women Emerge Stronger, with Maria Dowdy of the Chicago Network and Annie Warshaw of Mission Prepare, moderated by Heidi Stevens of the Chicago Tribune. And I know there was a lot to cover, so you weren't able to mainly cover everything. So that is why we put this together. We wanted to invite you to continue that discussion that you started on February 3rd. So before I start asking questions, I know Congresswoman Kelly briefly introduced you, but could you tell us a little bit more about your background, Sharita, and then Felicia, we'll go to you.
Yeah, I stopped saying that I'm the girl from the South Side when Felicia came on the set and started saying that she is the girl from the South Side. So I kind of lost my
claim. I got the Twitter account to prove it.
But I like to say, South Side born, the shy raised, because I've actually lived on every part of this city. I lived on the South Side. I lived on the North Side. The West Loop before it was the West Loop, where they were trying to make it the West Loop. And product of CPS, I graduated from Lane Tech High School, went to Illinois State University for undergrad, and did my graduate work later in life at Notre Dame. And I spent the first part of my career in for-profit, working at full service marketing, advertising agencies. Marketing communications is my background. And then I went to nonprofit, and I've been in my nonprofit for a very long time now, at least 20 years now. So started with the YMCA, served as the executive director at the Southside Y and the Wabash YMCA for a few years. And then before Women Employed, I was with an organization called Skills for Chicagoland's Future, which focused on getting unemployed individuals back to work, closing that access gap. And now here I am. I have a college-age daughter that's graduating in May. I am the proud mama, and was just awarded a full scholarship at the University of Chicago for her graduate work. So again, proud mama and happy that the checks can stop writing. And that is me.
I can't wait to next May myself.
Felicia.
Congratulations, Sharita. Free 99. I mean, that's the way to free 99. Good evening, everyone. Felicia Davis, President and CEO of Chicago Foundation for Women. I'm also a girl from the South Side. The only difference between Sharita and I is that I have the Instagram and the Twitter account to prove it, I guess. But I am the product of Chicago Public Housing, Chicago Public Schools, just like Sharita talked about. I, am the oldest to a mom of 4 children. I have 2 sisters and a brother, to a mom who dropped out of high school when I was a little girl. And that presented itself with challenges for us: food insufficiency, housing insufficiency, clothing insufficiency. We had a lot of challenges as a family growing up, but I also saw my work is informed by this every single day. I also saw all the things that my mother had to do to provide for us, including going back to school and saying, if I tell you that school is important, if education is important, that I have to show you, and gave me the best example of that in my life that really resonates with me today. I'm the mother of 5 kids. And my last one is in college. He just started. So, Sharita knows this. He's completing his freshman year in college, but he is the last of 5. So one day I'm going to be in the free 99 or the no 99 territory, I guess. But I still have a few years to go before that happens. Still live on the South Side. Sharita and I aren't far from each other in our neighborhoods. And I really do, I'm inspired by the women. Collectively, I call them, Miss Jenkins and Miss Jones, but really they represent the collective of Black women who have been lifting up our communities, who taught us things about ourselves, who know how to heal everything from a mosquito bite to labor pains and anything in between, who really are the thread that keep our communities connected. And I pay homage to them because, they really didn't get their, fair anything. There was no equity for them, and the work that they did, there's no buildings that have their names on them, but truly, truly, they are the reason why many of us today exist and thrive. And so there are lots of those women coming up. And so I know Sharita and I both are fighting for those women collectively. Thank you for having me.
Thank you both. And we're all from the South Side. So South Side born and raised here. So we have 3 ladies here from the South Side. I'm not sure where Karen's from, but
Chatham.
She lives in Chatham. She's a Black.
We're all gonna be from the South Side. Okay. So before we start our discussion today, I want to give the startling statistics of how women have left the workforce in the past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we're going to turn it over to you, and I'll start asking you questions and discussing more. So according to the National Women's Law Center, since the pandemic started, women have lost more than 5.4 million jobs. In December 2020 alone, U.S. unemployment figures reported that all of the 140,000 jobs lost in December were all women, overwhelmingly Black and brown women. The McKinsey & Company 2020 Women in the Workplace report states 1 in 4 women consider downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce due to COVID-19. They also show that, especially the women in the senior level positions, they're downsizing and leaving due to childcare responsibility. The other women are just being totally forced out of the workforce. So now that was a national. Now I want to bring it a little home to Illinois. And I'm going to give some preliminary stats because I don't think the report has been finalized. That's broken down by state from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the Illinois unemployment rate right now is 9.1%. Now I want to note that this is higher than the national rate, which is 8.1. So we're higher, our unemployment rate, which you ladies definitely probably know. The average unemployment rate for women in Illinois is 9.7. For men is 8.6%. For white women in Illinois, it's 9.3. For Black women, we're at 12.5. But I do want to point out that Black men in Illinois are even higher at 16.8%. And for Hispanic and Latino women, it's 12.7%. Now, our younger workers are being hit even harder in Illinois. So ages of 16 to 24, we hit harder. So between the ages of 16 and 19, we're 23.3%, and the ages of 20 to 24 is 18%. So our young women workers between 16 and 19 is 23.2%, and the women workers between 20 to 24 is 17.6%. So panelists, so Felicia, Sharita, I gave all these statistics, all the data of how millions of women have left the workforce. Now, what the heck do we do now? How do we move forward and get women back to work? So that's the main question here. So Sharita, I want to start with you. So Illinois compared to the rest of the country, what do we need to do across the state of Illinois to ensure the economy is recovering? That we're, being centered on women, trying to get women back to work. And are we compared, like, how are other states developing their economic recovery? Especially with Black and Latinx women. And, what can we do? Because we've been impacted the most by the She-Cession.
Absolutely. And April, I think I'm glad that you shared the statistic for Black men in terms of unemployment, because there's a lesson in that. So from the Great Recession, we did not center the ones that were most impacted by the recession in the recovery. And because of that, Black communities are still suffering. Because of that, Black housing numbers have not come back up. Because of that, Black unemployment still remains in the double digits, even before the pandemic, when everybody were boasting about these 6-7%. Even at some point in Illinois, we had gotten down to close to under 5% unemployment because we did not center those that were most impacted in the recovery. So we have to learn our lesson from that, and we have to center, right? And what does that mean? A big part of that is that, we can take an example of what's being done by the current Biden administration. Just that. The stimulus packet was about centering women. It was about getting relief to those that needed the most. So the increase in tax credit for families, the billions of dollars that they're putting out there to get schools to reopen, the billions of dollars that they're putting in to make sure that childcare is available to everyone, making sure that we're extending unemployment benefits. All of those things are centered around making sure that we're building an infrastructure in which women can begin to recover. And Illinois should be no different. We are, a state that still does not have paid sick days for everyone across the state. We have it in Chicago, but we don't have it for the state of Illinois. We still don't have access to paid family and medical leave. We know as a country, we're behind the eight ball on that, but it doesn't mean that Illinois should not be leading in that area. We need to make sure that we pass legislation around making sure that we have proper workplace protections in place. There are still so many workers that are complaining that safety precautions are not being taken in their workplace. And in addition to that, they are afraid to report because they are in fear of retaliation. We need to make sure that when we create workforce development programs to come back, and Karen is going to, I'm sure, talk about this when we get back, that we use this as an opportunity, right, to fix the problem to begin with as to why women are being, disproportionately affected by this, because we are overrepresented in those low wage service jobs that have been decimated by this pandemic. So we need to use this as an opportunity to deal with this occupational segregation that we have, and to be able to shift women into roles and positions and careers that have family sustaining wages. Are there examples from across the country that other states are doing? I think all states are looking at what we should be doing, and Illinois should lead as opposed to follow. Connecticut has a recovery program that they put out, and it's all of the same things that I'm talking about. It's the not just childcare infrastructure, it's the caregiving infrastructure, because we're not just responsible for our kids, we're responsible for our family. We're responsible for our parents. We're responsible for our nieces and nephews and cousins. So we have to make sure that we have a care infrastructure that supports the duality of working and caring for your loved ones, right? And so, I can go on, but we need to make sure that all of those things are in place, along with making sure that people know how to access our earned income tax credits that we have, and that we're increasing that they know how to increase, that they know how to access some of the savings programs that we have, that they know how to access some of the relief, and that the relief is getting to the people that need it most. One of the other things that we have to look at is how we can support women's small businesses. We know that out of 1 in 4 women small businesses closed during this pandemic. We have to be able to do something to support those small businesses, to make them viable. Access to capital, which we know disproportionately women do not get the same access to capital as men do. So we know the right things to do. We need, one, our legislators to actually do them, but we need the general public to become aware of it and build will and support around it. I was at a rally early today around supporting hotel workers, right? All these hotel workers were fired when hotels closed. We understand the work isn't there. But as the work comes back, you need to bring those workers back first and not use this as an opportunity to cut your costs and post jobs. Now they have to reapply for the job and come back at minimum wage. So the city council needs to vote and pass this ordinance that's on the table. There are things in place that we can do. We just have to hold our legislators accountable to make sure this happens. And myself and Felicia and Karen and everybody else need to continue to shout from the hills how women have to be centered in our approach.
Felicia, do you have any comments?
Yeah, April, it's just a couple of things I wanted to add, and really because we're looking at the state of Illinois, and we're trying to find examples across the country, but let's just take this back because sociologist Jessica Calarico said other countries have safety nets and the U.S. has women, which has really been, other countries have affordable childcare, other countries have universal preschool, they have paid sick leave, they have greater access to healthcare. In fact, almost all other countries have paid family leave. One bright spot is that for the first time in forever, the conversation around paid leave is being talked about as an issue for all of us instead of a woman's only issue. It's the women overwhelmingly in the United States bear the brunt of care work and paid and unpaid care work. And so whatever, carefully constructed family arrangements we have, you got grandma and you have other people like helping, all of that went out of the window in the context of this global pandemic, right? So the safety net broke and our economy in the United States literally came to a crashing halt because of it, we still value women's work less, right? We still have gendered language around, her is internalized as caregiver and him as breadwinner. We had someone recently say, let's get your husbands back to work, but that person wasn't paying attention to the data, which show that the women were the ones who were really bearing the brunt of this downturn. It also, women can traditionally earn less. We still have to close this unequal pay gap. And this is one of the things that when I talk about, I try to call men into this conversation and have them understand what that means for them. Is chances are, men, I'm talking to you, chances are the women in your life that you love, whoever she is, your mother, your wife, your boo, your bae, your girlfriend, babe, all of it, the women, daughters, nieces, the women in your life, look at the research. She is likely not being paid equitably for same work, which means if you are part of that family unit and you depend on the income for your overall household to purchase things like additional housing, education for your kids, healthcare access, so forth and so on, you are also being hurt in this. And so I like to call men into this conversation so that they understand that you actually have skin in on this game because there are billions of dollars in GDP, which is earned money, revenue, productivity by spending that money that is being lost just in our region here in Illinois alone because of this persistent pay gap. At the same time, when women, and particularly Black women, because we've been taught to play the game, pursue more and more and more advanced degrees, women overwhelmingly carry student loan debt. So I like to also put a call out for some student loan debt, something significant, student loan debt relief for all the women who have done what we have asked them to do, to go to school. That if you go to school and to get the degree, you were supposed to get the job and you were supposed to be paid equitably for that work. So we also, one of the things that I'd like to put on the table is some substantial debt relief for those carrying student loans. In addition to everything else Sharita just said. So.
Karen, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to join you a little late. There's a high demand on International Women's Day.
Yes, there is.
So can you give us a little brief background about yourself, and then I'm going to pose the question they just asked to you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Norrington Reeves. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. My background is I've been in this job for about 10 years. We oversee the workforce development system for the city of Chicago and Cook County. And what that means is we help employers find the talent that they're looking for, and we help people develop the talent that they need in order to succeed in the labor force.
So we just gave our first question. I listed all the statistics for Illinois, the nation, about the unemployment rate. So my first question to Felicia and Sharita were, so what work needs to be done across the state of Illinois to ensure that economic recovery is centering women? How are other states developing plans for economic recovery, specifically women, especially Black and Latinx women, who have been most impacted by the current She-Cession?
Yeah, so what we need is an agenda that is focused on centering women. And we need an agenda around the state of Black Illinois and an agenda around the state of Latina Illinois, right? And so what that means is we have to look at the fact that we as women play multiple roles. I can tell you, just as I sit here, I am a mother, I am a CEO, I have responsibility for nearly 80 staff, I have responsibility for a huge budget, and I'm also a daughter. And so I've got a mother who's in her 70s, I've got a teenager, an 8-year-old. I wear a lot of hats every single day, and I am not unique, right? And so what that means is that when I think about me as an employer, my responsibility, particularly in the midst of this pandemic, is to recognize that my staff are whole human beings with lots of other hats that they wear every single day. And what we in this state have to do is to incentivize and or require that our employers are recognizing that. And you recognize that by flexible time, you recognize that by paid time off, you recognize that by paid sick leave, you recognize that by caring about and dialing into people's mental health and recognizing that there's a lot of stress associated with wearing all of these different hats. You recognize that by creating workplaces to the extent that you can that are project driven and deliverables driven, as opposed to you've got to be present from 9 to 5. And it means that you also offer people the ability to work remotely where those work circumstances allow it.
Thank you very much. So Felicia, you had kind of touched on talking about people trying to get the degrees and for the education. So who's researching all of these in-demand careers? Because I know right now, sometimes women, even before the pandemic hit, you get blocked out of the in-demand jobs because you don't have a degree or the certification needed. So how do we tackle the occupational segregation? How can we improve the connections between higher education and current, workforce systems to help women learn about these in-demand careers and receive the training and education required? So I don't know, Karen or Felicia, either Sharita, who do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I mean, my team does this work. I mean, the labor market information, the demand occupations and high growth, high demand sector information is something that we are responsible for analyzing. But if you look, and it varies by region. So if you look in the city of Chicago and in Cook County, it's the same things that career and technical education is aligned around. It is the same sectors that World Business Chicago is focused on, the same sectors that the city colleges are designed around. The reality is that there are often barriers for us to access those roles. Number one, we may not know about them. They're not roles that we've been exposed to. So I think one of our responsibilities is to create more career exposure and career exploration for women of all ages, down to young girls. The other piece is to make sure that there are folks who look like them in these roles and to provide, again, that exposure and that experiential learning opportunity. The last piece is around biases. And so it seems we are overrepresented in the service industry, and that is not unintentional, right? We are underrepresented in IT, we're underrepresented in manufacturing, we're underrepresented in TD&L and other roles where there are good, solid wages on which you can support a family. And so I think the onus is on all of us who have access to that information to create pipelines for young women.
And I will add, April, Karen made a lot of great points. The other thing I think about this, in logistics, there's this term, the last mile, right? It's your goods have already traveled from wherever they're manufactured, and it's the last mile to actually get it delivered to your house. And I look at what happens with employment opportunities as how are we connecting that last mile? Often things are posted, positions are posted. There's a lot of grassroots organizing that has to happen, and advocacy and outreach to actually connect the people who need the jobs most to the jobs. It's almost like solving that last mile issue in real time, so right now, as we mentioned, Karen and I both live in Chatham, and so our targeted close, I don't know how long ago, a few years ago. And so right now, Discover 4 years ago, Discover is coming in. And so Skills for Chicagoland Future and a lot of other, and Chicago Cook Workforce. I mean, so now the work is connecting the people in our communities to these jobs almost in real time, right? The outreach that's required. For our part, sometimes that means wraparound services, which is really important, but it's also important on the other side. I will say this, that companies and organizations also have to change the dynamics of what happened inside of the workplace. From our standpoint at Chicago Foundation for Women, one of the things that we push and have people understand is that you need to lead with some gender equity or even have a gender lens on things. So you need to be paying attention to, in the ladies' room, for example, are you providing feminine protection products? Are you doing that free, or is there some cost to it, right? And are you providing a range of sizes? Are you providing safety? Are the areas well lit? These are the things that make women safe at work. Are you providing those types of resources, as well as if Karen has done the great work and Sharita has done the great work and some of our other frontline partners and brought, you say, a cohort of women, how well are you at integrating those women into the organization and solving any culture shock that may happen on either side? Because if you bring people in at scale, particularly women of color in at scale, it's going to disrupt like the status quo, and some people are going to feel a little bit off balance. But the job of the employer and the company is to make those women feel as comfortable as the people who were in the organization prior to their arrival, right? So organizations also have to do their part, and then rethink what it looks like for somebody who does that work. So Karen knows this. My sister, who was working in CPS for a long time, teacher in frontline, was hurt, and she needed to figure out something else to do. And she took a coding boot camp class through Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. Now, Karen knows this story because I talk to my sister every day, and I won't say it was easy. It was actually quite challenging, but it is not beyond. I mean, this is a woman who, my sister was 48, I think, when she did this. So this is a woman who hadn't been in school for a long time, but it was doable. And so the other thing that we need to do is change the conversations around who can do tech. Everyone, like who literally can do tech. There is some kind of a brainwashing that happens with young girls leading into adolescence and early adulthood about math and science, basically all the STEM fields, that somehow they are not as capable. And let's go back, y'all, to when computer science first began. Y'all all saw the hidden figures, right? Who are the people doing that work, right? Women were doing that work. And as it evolved, and then it was like, oh, it's coveted and highly desirable, men started to move in, the pay started to go up and so forth. And so let's just go back to that and understand that women, anyone well supported and provided with training, can do the work. And so organizations have to look a little bit differently at what the resume looks like for someone who comes in and does the work. I mean, when we talked about our backgrounds, all of us have like varied resumes, and somebody may be like, wait, what does that mean for this or that, right? The resume doesn't necessarily tell you the full range of what a person can do once they get the opportunity.
I just want to, I'm sorry, April, can I just add one thing to that? Because I want also people to know I sit on the Illinois Board of Higher Education Strategic Planning Advisory Council. And this is actually one of the conversations that we're having to improve racial equity outcomes in post-secondary work. And we have, and I'm going to forget the numbers, so I'm not going to quote it, but we have an overabundance of credentials that employers don't value. And so we do have to do a better job with our post-secondary institutions and our workforce partners to make sure that what we offer are the same, are aligned with what employers value, so that people aren't wasting time unless they just want that for their, edification. They're not wasting time going to get these credentials that will not get them the job, right? So they have to make sure that we are providing advice and counsel that will steer them into jobs that are going to pay them these family sustaining wages. So there is a role in post-secondary, and they are looking at how to address that, across the state. So I think that is happening. One of the other things I want to touch on is that we have to do a better job of there on both sides. We also have to do a better job of preparing individuals to do, Felicia, just what you talked about, articulate how their skills transfer from one job to the next. I don't care what my job was, but this is what I know how to do. And we need people to be able to articulate what that value is, because employers are listening for, what do you know how to do? What are you bringing to me? And then employers absolutely have to do a better job of improving their culture to make sure that it's inclusive. And that's from the hiring practices, right? All the way on to, onboarding to day one. We used to work with an employer who part of their interview process was to take you to, a local bar to do the interview. And this was a sales company. And because, they're young and they're hip and they're like, let's meet at this bar. Where if you are this, let's say you're this, Black woman from the south side of Chicago that had never been up to Lincoln Park, and now you're being thrown in an interview setting in this bar where no one looks like you. Now you have to, one, know how to navigate a social setting and interview for the job at the same time. You're already behind the 8 ball. So we have to make sure that we're calling those things out and we're holding the employers accountable. So I think you have to look at the whole ecosystem and what are the barriers in this ecosystem that we just need to dismantle and create anew.
So April, I just want to piggyback on one thing Sharita said, this issue about the language and communicating with employers. So I'm going to give you this little example. We once did this big hiring event with Starbucks focused on young adults. And I was part of the mock interviewing sessions to make sure that the young men and women were prepared. And a young woman came from my mock interview. She said, I started, I'm like, tell me all about yourself. Comes out, she's 23, has a 2-year-old child. This is how she started. I'm 23, I have a 2-year-old child. I've never had a job before, but I want to do a good job for your company. And I said, let's rewind. This is not how we're going to start off our interview, right? So we start walking through, and she can't articulate anything. She can't answer the questions. So then I said, all right, tell me what you're interested in. Do you have any extracurriculars? Do you volunteer anywhere? Long story short, this young woman proceeds to tell me how she was number 2 in her ROTC group. She rappelled down a 60-foot bluff. She led everybody else down. I said, had you ever done it before? No. I said, were you scared? Yes. Well, why did you do it? Because I had to show everybody else that they could do it too. So I just had to swallow my fear and go on down. She told me how, I said, what's your greatest accomplishment? Getting her GED, because she got it the week that she found out she was pregnant. It was also the week that her little brother was murdered. So this girl, young woman, what she did not have was the vocabulary of employers. And what she did not have was an asset-based vocabulary about who she was and what she could bring to the table, what her skill sets were. She didn't know to say, I persevered in the face of adversity. She didn't know to say, I'm a leader. She didn't know to say, I'm the one they go to. I'm the reliable person that they come to at church, and I get to guard the lockbox, right? And so we have a responsibility to teach our young women how to use the vocabulary of the workplace to describe their assets and to convey their value to an employer.
I wanted to bring, because and these are all good points, because I know a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of young women, I saw a young woman the year before last, not this past summer, and she came into Wendy, and she was trying to get a job interview, and she was in jeans, gym shoes, t-shirt, jeans all cut up. And after she walked out, and I said, so were you trying to get a job? She said, yes. I said, so did you think about, you came in jeans, I heard you speaking, even they can articulate, but maybe they don't come dressed for the part. Because I said, I heard you talking to the manager, you're very intelligent, you articulated very well, but all they saw was you walking through the door. So that means, and when you came in with ripped jeans on, tight t-shirt and all that, I said, so would you hire you right off? And she said, no, I never thought about it like that. She said, I just know I had to come for the interview. I wanted to work, and I just threw something on. And I said, well, we have to think about the whole picture, not just that little small thing that, I just want the job, so I'm going to the interview. So I think that education piece, even articulation of how to describe yourself, but even just how your appearance should be, you have to teach them. Also, I know you both have mentioned, how do we have, so some women are re-entering the workforce. And I know, Felicia, you talked about your sister, 48, she had to learn how to code. How do you teach these women how to rethink? Like you said, now I gotta go, I've been working, say, in insurance because I know you have the AARP, Karen, in the Chicago Cook report. But how do you train these women to go from, I've been doing this for 20 something years, I got laid out during the pandemic. How do I switch to this over here? Because I know that's going to be hard, and they're going to be thinking like, I can't do this.
Yeah, so it is really about a paradigm shift. But the first thing that you have to do, if you want to persuade anybody that they can do anything, you connect with them. And so that's the responsibility of our career coaches, to develop that relationship and to really see people, again, through this asset-based model, to see their strengths and to articulate their strengths to them and to help them see their own strengths. But that all begins with a relationship first. That's not a go in and lecture at people. It's not talking at folks. It's having a conversation with them and really pulling out of them who they are and who they want to be and reflecting that back to them.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Felicia.
Go ahead.
I would just add on to that. Listen, 84% of Black mothers in Illinois are sole or primary breadwinners in their household. We're not going to have to convince them to do something else, because one thing women will do is do what they need to do to take care of their families. What we need to do is make sure that we're positioning the opportunities that are available to them. What we need to make sure is that the information is getting into the communities that are typically void of information. We need to make sure that we're educating them on what the path is going to be, how long it's going to take them to get there, what they're going to need, and then what the benefit in the end is going to be. So we have to do our job of making sure that the information is readily available and that it's getting to the people that it needs to get to, and that we're designing our trainings, right, to meet the needs of women, which might look different than it did when we were coming out of the recovery for, the Great Recession, where people could do this training at different times. Women will have different barriers to that. So we need to make sure that we are looking at are we providing childcare? Is it being offered at flexible time that allows me to do X, Y, and Z? So we need to make sure, are we putting different things in the training model that will help me as a woman when I go and interview, and now I'm going to have to articulate how I'm making this transition from one career to the next, and probably going from an industry that's female dominated to one that is male dominated. So it's really about providing that information. And I guarantee you that women will take and do what they need to do to take care of themselves and their family.
And what I would add to that too is for women not to be afraid, and that sometimes we have to do it past fear, and that it's what we seek is often on the other side of our comfort zone. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I spent 10 years, the beginning of my career, in the Chicago Police Department, but for all purposes, I could have spent I think my 29th anniversary with the department would have been this past December. So I could have spent a whole career there and had a wonderful job, a good government job, as they say, with benefits and a pension at the end of the day. I took a chance on myself. I will say, when I left, I started with the leave of absence. I left the police department, and I just knew I could always go back to that. I wanted to do something different. I was growing my family, so it started off as an off-ramp. So which many women have to do. So you are the caregiver, you are the bearer of the children. So I off-ramped to accommodate my family, which means at some point I have to figure out an on-ramp back into the workforce. In those decisions, women, I want to tell you to do it scared anyway, to take the chance on yourself, because our friend Kim Fox, we were on a panel once, and she said mediocre white men are doing it every single day. Every single day, mediocre men are saying, I'm going to go be president of the United States, or I'm going to go be whatever. And sometimes we hold ourselves back, like, well, I don't have a PhD in education, so I can't run for the school board, or I don't have a blah, 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 right? So I'm going to say those things that make us resilient in our communities, the things that Karen talked about with the young woman she was having the conversation before, those natural leadership skills, those natural reserves of being able to be resilient, of being resourceful, like all of those things really do matter. And I want women to know that the comfortable stuff that you've always done may not get you to where you want to be. If those jobs are gone, we have to pivot. And I think you heard it, all of us. I mean, leaving the police department, and since then I've done so many other things not related. They're seemingly, separate and not related to anything. And I've had to do those things, and I've had to do a lot of on-the-job learning. I've had to do a lot of listening. I've had to do a lot, and I think we should all, as your life unfolds, that's the other thing that I would say, that we always have to be ready to learn more, refresh our skills. All y'all, I was born, we didn't even have, my telephone in my house was on the wall with a cord that went into every room, right? In my lifetime, and I remember we had pagers, like, ooh, we need pagers. I remember when I had a pager with 2 numbers in it, ooh, I'm doing it, right? And then you get the big cell phones, and then you get this, we didn't have computers. I type. I learned how to type. And so just think about that. So in the course of my lifetime, how many pivots I've had to do just by virtue of living in the world. And then you say, well, how does that like skill attainment translate into the workforce? Because it's the same, right? It is the same set of skills. And so I want to say, be willing to take those risks on yourself, and take those chances on yourself. And trust me, there are a lot of people who have your back. Like y'all, if you don't know me, Sharita and Karen, before today, you've never heard of us. Every single day we're working for you. Every single day we are rooting for you. Every single day we are building pathways and partnerships and trying to make the system work better for you. And it's us and hundreds more people, the Congresswoman and the Black Caucus, and all, like, think about it over and over again. So names you know, names you don't know, that we're working for you. And so we want to see you be successful, because when you rise, our whole community rises. It goes back to, y'all are Miss Jenkins and Miss Jones too. And we need all the Miss Jenkins and Miss Jones to be the best that they could possibly be, for our communities to be the best they can be.
Sorry about that. We have a question from Kayla Lewis, and she has the best She wants the best advice or tip given for being a woman of color in the workforce.
We have enough time for this?
I'm gonna. All right, I'm gonna keep mine really, really brief. The best tip and advice that I can give you, I can only tell you what has worked for me. Be yourself. Be your authentic, genuine self. You don't have to shape shift for anybody, and you don't have to compete with anybody either. I tell folks all the time, I'm not gonna compete with you to serve poor folks. I'm not gonna do that, right? I tell my team, keep your head down and do your work. It doesn't matter. Like this group is getting shine or that group's getting, it doesn't matter. You do your work, and everything that is for you and nobody else. So be your authentic self, show up every day, do your best, and take care of yourself. Take care of your heart in the midst of all this, because this can be soul crushing to be at work, be in environments where you are unsupported. But truly, be your authentic self and show up and do your.
Sharita, Felicia?
That's so broad. Oh, go ahead, Felicia. You go.
No, well, I was going to say the same thing that Karen said about authenticity, because the thing is that no one is you. And about being yourself, I want to hit a couple of finer points on this. I was about to say, but do not change your tone of voice because of the different audiences that you are in. It is one of my biggest pet peeves when women change their voice and they get that light, lilty talk when they're talking to different people, like this power dynamic. Be yourself. Your voice is all you have. If you have a deep, resonant voice, then use that voice. And so it's one of the things that really drives me crazy, because what you have just done is that you have erased your own personhood to fit into some other type of box, right? And so use the voice that you have. I tell my team that. I tell other women that. Like, that's one of the most important things. And the other thing I would say is be somebody that another Black woman can come to for support. Overwhelmingly, as we were raised in these structures that were not built to sustain us or to support us, we've always had to understand everything about everybody else. We had to understand because our lives depended on the moods of other people. So we were always sensing and bringing in information. There has to be someone else in your organization where you are that person for each other, or that what you are seeking, be that to another woman. One of the things I get a lot is people ask me, well, how did you pivot from the public sector? Like, you've done all these different things. Like, how did you do that? And I will say, y'all, the people who are asking me this don't look like me. And I know that they have networks that are working for them, because some of their networks get them to me in the first place. And I am still dismayed, honestly, at the lack of phone calls or text messages or DMs on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, wherever you're at, about, hey, sis, hey, Felicia, I don't know you, but could I have 15 minutes? Could I have 30 minutes? I promise you, I will give you that time, because none of us got here. We didn't wake up. No, I know what Beyonce said, y'all, but we did not wake up like this. And so I would say that when you're in that workplace and you echo another woman, repeat what she said. Don't let people mansplain over her. Repeat what the woman next to you just said. Yes, Lord, it didn't happen unless a man said it. No. Say part of our responsibility is then to be that beacon for another woman. And if we keep doing that, right, then we're going to have these points of light in every organization and everywhere. Like, you know how sometimes you're like, I see you, sis. I see you. And all the stuff that Karen said, my mama said, look, they're not going to always recognize your hard work, but I promise you it pays off. So you do it. She said, I don't care if you're a street walker or a street cleaner. She was fascinated with streets. I don't know, y'all. But she said, whatever you gonna do, whatever you going to do, do it to the utmost of your ability, because they're never going to be able to take that away from you. Your accomplishments are going to add up, and then you're going to look and you're going to have this body of work that you earned from hard work.
And I think I would just add on to that, to not allow the workplace to break you, not allow it to take you off your square. If you are a woman of integrity, don't allow that workplace to challenge your integrity. Don't lower yourself to someone else because you feel like you're being attacked or you feel like you're undervalued. Leave. Go to the next place where you are valued. Take your talent somewhere else. Take your time somewhere else, because someone will receive it and you will be able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish in that next place. Like Karen had put in the chat that, I don't know if everybody's like, just remember that you are enough. I have this conversation with my daughter all the time. I have to have a conversation with her all the time and adjust her crown, because too often she begins to compare herself to these mythical people that don't exist. And I tell her all the time, you're competing against mediocrity. Understand that you are above average. Understand that you are the prize and you are valued, and you have to remember that and have people in your corner that will help you remember that when you can't remember it for yourself. Your kitchen cabinet, that's really important. You have to build a kitchen cabinet. And what I mean by that, you have to build your own board of directors. You have to have somebody on your board that's going to lift you up. You have to have somebody on your board that's going to tell you and pull your coattails when they need to be pulled, when you getting a little bit too fly. You got to have somebody that will be able to network and click you into opportunities. You have to have a sponsor. You have to have all these different people on your board to help you move in the direction that you want to move, because none of us, it does take a village. It's just like raising children. We don't do this alone. I'm a single parent. I still didn't do it alone. It takes a village. So just think about that when you're in your workplace, and assess who you have in your kitchen table, your kitchen cabinet, and make moves accordingly.
We have another question, and I have a few questions also still. But it takes quite a bit of, so Kimberly Jackson states, it takes quite a bit of strength or confidence to take credit for work that we've done because we're taught to be team players. I think more people need to hear this. Can you share ways that is done without, how do you take credit for your work without being arrogant about it?
So I just responded to that. First, how many men do you know who say, let me see, if I talk about what I've done, am I going to sound arrogant? None. I mean, seriously? Okay, maybe some. I don't want to be totally dismissed, but I'm just saying, I sit next to pompous people on a regular basis, talk about all they've done, and don't know, anything. Had to catch myself. It from Shinola, right? And so the reality is that we as women get in our head. I'm a thinker, I'm an overthinker, right? So we overthink how other people are going to perceive us. And the reality is, you have the right to stand on your accomplishment, because if you don't, who will? And so you have got to get out of your head and quit faking yourself out. And so Felicia made reference to the term "do it scared." There's a book called "Do It," phenomenal, right? It is. Think about all the reasons why you can't do something and all the things that's wrong with whatever it is you want to do, and you do it anyway. And so you are letting a perception hold you back when you don't know that the reality is that you're going to be being arrogant. How do you know that they won't perceive you as being stupid or accomplished or smart or competent? And there is, you can talk about the work that you've done without, yes, dare to lead, absolutely. Brene Brown, right? You can talk about the work that you've done without sounding like an arrogant windbag. As a matter of fact, it's your responsibility to do that, because how then do you sell yourself to an employee? How then do you help your manager know what you've accomplished so that you get that bonus, or you get that raise, or you get that promotion? You have to be able to stand on who you are and what you've done in your authentic self. You have to do it. Even if it feels awkward, you'll learn. Do it enough and you will learn.
And I will add too that sometimes what happens is you can be in this was a real life example. So recently we were in our team, we were in a focus group for our team for this piece of work that we're doing. And outside evaluators asked this question, and the answer was around leadership. But so what they asked was, what's the difference between this point prior and now, right? Like, what's the difference? How come the organization didn't execute on XYZ then? And why do you think that the organization is executing now? So I sat there for a minute because, and the first answer that came up is leadership matters. It actually matters. And so I didn't say anything. One of the staff members said, I have to give credit to Felicia for, XYZ, and this is what it is. So one of the things that I will say, because this happens all the time, and I know y'all see it happens, you will have proposed an idea, a suggestion, and I'm not talking about the mansplaining that happens. I'm talking about, like, you just delivered the strategy and the strategy was successful. And in the retelling of how it came to be that the strategy was successful, your contributions are somehow left out or skipped. And now all of a sudden it's the teams, right? Like, oh, we're so great, we just did XYZ, right? And there is nothing wrong with reminding people and bringing back to the origin of that idea. And I would also say that, taking a page out of the Obama White House and the lead from Valerie Jarrett, and that the women in the room echo the achievements of the other women in the room, so that it's clear who made the contribution and whose idea it was that we were executing on, right? It may have been a team effort to execute on that thing, but you have to give credit to the person who came up with that strategy or that idea. And I will say, Karen is right. Anybody who watches sports, you see, especially in football, come on now, when one of those young, fantastic in shape athletes, right, carries that ball across the line, do you see them like just, walking off and like they celebrate? They're like, yeah, I did that, right? There's nothing wrong with taking a minute to be like, look what I just did, and keep track of your accomplishments for yourself. And I tell people this at the time, the performance review is your highlight reel. It's all the stuff you remind, because people forget, managers forget. It's like the last thing you did or the first thing you did, right? All the stuff in the middle gets lost. So keep track of your own accomplishments, contributions. This is your highlight reel, so that when it comes time, you're able to say, these are some of the things that I executed on this year. And I mean, those accomplishments can't be argued with.
Thank you very much. So I'm gonna go back to my question. We don't have any more questions right now in the Q&A. I know we touched on this a little bit earlier. I think all of you touched on it, but so now we're moving ahead. What barriers do we still need to tear down for women? So I know because mainly women are gonna have the lion's share of the caregiving responsibilities. And I know someone mentioned before, you're not just caring for your children, but also like myself, my father just moved in with me in October. So this is a whole different world for my husband and I, because now we have my 83-year-old father who's used to doing his stuff his way. And now we're like, okay, Dad, in our house, we do it this way. And he's really not trying to hear. Our son is in college. He's a junior. So we've been used to, being home by ourselves. And now we have my father. And it's not the same as having our child in here, because you can't at all tell him you can tell him what to do, but is he really going to listen? Because because he's my father. He's basically telling me what to do. So I'm in the my office is down here in the basement, but sometimes I have somebody coming in like a couple hours a day, but I gotta leave sometimes. I have actually run out of a meeting because my father has fallen. So I know I'm doing that still working. So how do we break down these barriers? Like, what do we do?
So a couple things, and I think employers really have a large role to play in this. We're in this moment where we have already began to rethink how we work. So what was thought of as absolutely not, we can never do that, is a possibility, or it's actually being done right now. At no point in time did we ever think that the majority of the workforce would be at home working virtually, right? And yet here we are. So there is a place, right, for employers to take this moment and think about what it means to create a workplace that, that allows our employees to be productive and however that means for them. So if that means working from home, if that means working in the office, if that means that you need to take half a day off and work late in the evenings, or you work a Saturday instead of a Monday, we ought to be allowing, where it's possible, because there are obviously jobs where that is just not possible, but where it is possible, that we allow that flexibility. And I think Felicia talked about that flexibility earlier. So I think one of those is, how do we push, and this is one of the things that my organization is looking at, how do we continue to push employers on creating an environment in which people truly can have this work-life balance, and the work-life balance that was not defined by the patriarchy, right? That work-life balance that was not defined by the fact that at one point in time, the workforce was only men who had someone at home taking care of the family. That's not our reality. Let it go. So let's define what the workplace should be in our current reality. So I think that that's one of the barriers. It's a barrier of lack of imagination. We have to overcome the lack of an imagination when it comes to what it means to work. And so I think that that's one of the barriers. The other barrier that we have to overcome is the feeling of, if we push for this equitable environment, it means that I'm losing out. Because in order for you to get, that means that I might have to give up. And that is a true barrier that we're going to have to overcome, because equity truly does mean that some people may have to get less than. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to take what you already have, but it might mean that you're going to get less than in the future. And we have to get over that barrier of individuals, right, feeling like it's only about me, and you need to get yours the best way that you can. So that's another barrier. And those are huge things, because those are philosophical kind of thoughts that we have to overcome. And Felicia put in racism. I'm gonna let her tackle that, because we absolutely have to get over the barrier of racism and sexism in this country. Let's just reckon with it and move forward, and understand that we have to do it. And you don't get to define what's being too sensitive or what's going too far where you're not on the receiving end on it. So I'm going to stop there, because I'm going to allow my panelists to get in on some of those barriers, because I can keep going, because there are many.
So that there was something you just said that just hit me. Not the racism, it was back before that. This issue about the I don't even want to call it accommodation, but the shift in the workplace, right? I was reading this article just last weekend about the cost and the toll of emotional labor. And so, April, what you just described is about the emotional labor that is borne largely by women. So in the article, the woman was talking about how she had asked her husband, the gift she wanted from her husband was this day off, right, where she could go away and do the spa treatment and all this other stuff. Well, he forgot to book everything, because he's accustomed to her booking it. He forgot to do all this stuff, but then was like, well, I'll cook. And she was like, No, because then I got to clean up the kitchen. Like, you're missing the point here, right? And so there is the emotional labor of being at home, juggling a parent, juggling children, juggling the work, and never having any of that downtime. And so, for employers, that pivot is about recognizing, again, we're whole people, and we show up as whole people, and whole people who wear multiple hats, who have all these other things that have to be done. And so to create a space where we as women don't also carry the emotional labor of being in our head about, who am I dropping a ball for? Who am I letting down? How I haven't done this. I haven't done this. There's always this constant dialogue of not being present for this person, or not being present for work, or not being present to a child's needs. And then when are you ever present to yourself in the midst of all that? And so if we shifted what it means to be successful at work and didn't look at it through the lens of, a white male hierarchy or patriarchy, and really started to look at the entirety of the family, and that me being successful means that I'm able to meet all these tasks and accomplish these goals at work, and also that my children's needs are met, right? And I think that we are going to see some shifts. Let me just button this up. I think we're going to see some shifts, because the funny thing to me is watching men having to juggle the kids and the dog and everything else when we're on these Zoom calls, the way that women have been doing forever before it was in a video screen in your face every week, right? And so I think that we will see shifts, because now they also are recognizing the challenges for themselves in juggling all of this stuff. The other reason we're going to see shifts is because we're going to be loud and vocal and demand.
I agree with everything that my co-panelists are saying. So I don't know if you all have heard of the term weathering before. Weathering. There was a young undergrad. She was an undergrad student in Princeton University, and she noticed that she was working part-time in Trenton, New Jersey, which is right by Princeton. And she noticed that the Black women, teen mothers who were the same age as her Princeton, her name was Arlene Geronimo or something like that. They were having all kinds of health issues. The Black young teenagers, the same age as her classmates, were having all kinds of issues, health issues, like inexplicable. And she went on to devote herself to this in grad school and so forth. And essentially it describes the effect of all of this, racism, discrimination, all of the effects of the, patriarchal norms and so forth on Black women's bodies. One of the two things I want to say about that is, one, we have a role to play in changing this dynamic moving forward, in that if you are a mother, and particularly mother of sons and daughters, the way that you mirror equity and distribution of housework and whatever that work is in your house is extremely, extremely important, because that is what gets perpetuated in the workforce and so on and so on, right? So one of the things that, I've been able to see as I glimpse into people's homes is this gender dynamic play itself out, where, sometimes in spaces, spouses or co-parents or partners are in the same frame of the Zoom camera, and the kids come into the room, and I have seen in my own staff and others that the kids never go to the dad, ever. They always go to the mom, right? Well, in that dynamic, the mother and the father play a role in teaching the child that there is equity in this work. So one, we have to stop that's a pipeline or whatever it is. We need to stop that from replicating itself. A couple of the ways that I did that in my own house, I have 4 boys and a daughter, is, when you walk in the door at the end of the day from work, right? One of the first things my sons just say is Mom, what's for dinner? Legit, from 5 years old or earlier, right? And I would say, let's time out. Let me understand. You want to understand something. I'm a human being, and I just had a hard day's work. I need about 15 minutes to myself to gather my thoughts and to think about things. But the answer anytime anybody asks me what's for dinner is dinner, because it don't matter, because I'm not a short order cook. It'll be whatever I put on this plate in a few minutes. But I also taught every adult, every kid in our house to cook. Everybody knows how to cook. Everybody knows how to bake. They can make pancakes from scratch. Like, this is legit. We have to like change these gender roles in our own homes and shake that up a bit so that we are creating humans who understand their contributions on this side of the work equation, right? So that in the future, all of us, that generation has more of a balance of work-life integration, and also on the distribution of what work looks like inside the home. That goes a long way in alleviating all of these additional pressures and stress. And the other thing that I will say to all of us, and it's something that I'm working on myself, I have paid time off. I have sick leave. I have vacation. I no longer offer excuses about why I need to use it. It's mine. So you don't have to tell me I'm going to go for my mammogram. It's yours to take. You have sick time to take. Because what we are setting up is this dynamic where, what if somebody else feels like my reason for taking sick time isn't good enough, and somehow now I'm not, like, it's not justified? Well, that's not justified. It's my time. Or vacation. I may take a vacation day and be right here in my house. Well, I've taken a lot of vacation days right here in my house because of COVID. But the point is taking your time, and overwhelmingly, Americans, all of us, we do not use all of our vacation time. I made a commitment to myself when I took this role, was to take a vacation a quarter. Like, no matter what, I need a break. I need to give my mind, I need to give my body a break. I even did, for the first time ever at CFW, collective rest, where I closed the office. We all had a break because I needed them to have a break so I could have a break, right? Like, some of that stuff the emails don't stop when it's just me, but when we were all off, that was the most peace that I have had like this entire year, just having that like lifted off my shoulder. So
Alicia, I did the same thing. I shut the entire office down for all of Christmas break and until the new year. Had never, ever done it before, just because people were gonna break. They were just gonna break. Yeah. And the other thing I'm looking at that I think would be complements what you're talking about, I'm looking at doing unlimited PTO. Mm-hmm. You take what you need. Go pick your kid up from school. Go run your mother to the doctor. Yeah. Go to Aruba, right? But get your work done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's ways to hold people accountable that still allows them to live their lives in a balanced way, right?
Right. And we have how you organize your day too, right? So one of the, I think, Sharita, you and I have talked about this, like myself, that every hour on my calendar doesn't need to be blocked off in a meeting to show or prove that I'm productive, that the time that I spend thinking and writing, I need to write a lot of stuff. And so consequently, what I was doing was pushing all of that deep strategy stuff to the weekend. And so then comes Monday. So here I am working my whole weekend because I haven't allocated time in my day to actually do that, like strategic planning and thinking.
Yeah. So some of the things that we've done, like for the summers, we did Fridays off for the whole summer instead of half day Fridays, because because people needed it. We were working so many hours and people were just slammed. So we did Fridays off. And then once that summer Fridays off ended, we now have what you call Focus Fridays. And on Focus Fridays, you aren't supposed to schedule internal or external meetings. And if you can avoid external meetings, sometimes you can't, but you have permission to say that I'm not available on that. So sometimes it's about giving permission to your employees. Like, we have to model this behavior so that they know that it's okay. And I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at taking my time. I was better when COVID was open because I did take a vacation once a quarter. Now it's like, where I'm going, but I'm still taking my time. So we have to model this behavior so that they know that it's okay, because it's so new. You know, when we changed to this whole flexible work schedule this year, we're still teaching our employees how to work in a flexible environment, because they are still checking in or asking for permission or doing these things. I'm like, you don't have to do those things anymore. This is new. and we have to adjust in it, but we have to constantly work at it because we know that it's new.
But this is American culture, though, right? I mean, it is uniquely American culture. When you travel in other places in the world, this is not how people work. When you go to places in Europe where they have paid parental leave, not maternity, paid parental leave, where you take 6 months off to be with your child, in some cases a year. And in one country, if I remember correctly, is a total of 18 months to be split between the parents, right? And so that it's shared responsibility. So this is a uniquely American, this workaholic thing that is just ingrained in us. And we as women internalize it and take it another step of, we don't have value, or we don't add value if we're not doing that to ourselves, if our calendars aren't booked back to back to back. One of the tools that I actually just started using this with my staff. So we have Microsoft Outlook, like a lot of you all do. And it does this My Analytics thing.
Yes.
And it analyzes your calendar and it analyzes your schedule. So I required my entire team to go in and use this tool and look at, what is the volume of email? What is your volume of meetings? How focused are you in these meetings? Do you have focus time built into your calendar? Because just like Felicia said, I can work, but I can't think strategically. I can't plan if I don't take any time to free my brain. The joke on my staff is that my best ideas come to me when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning. Mm-hmm. Why is that? But seriously, why is it? Mm-hmm. There's nobody talking to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not engaged in anything else. My mind is free to ideate. And so the joke is like, Karen, did you brush your teeth today? Because, we need to solve da, 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 da. And I'm like, of course I brushed my teeth. But that is the joke, right? Mm-hmm. Because they know, like, that's when it flows. And so I've required everybody to create time. The other thing that we've added is mindfulness meditation Mondays. So every Monday at 4 p.m., I have hired somebody to do guided meditation, and it's optional for our staff to opt in. Now, I say all that big talk. How many times have I been able to go? I've been able to go once because of meetings, but I have my own meditation practice, right? So I already do it for myself, right? Because it's important, but I wanted my staff to be able to have that too. And these are just little things that employers can do to create sanity and to allow us to have some time to step back and create balance for ourselves and our lives. I see my good friend, Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Hi, friend. I miss you.
But Congresswoman, I know you have to head out for a minute, so do you want to chime in?
No, I just want to, I'm listening to you guys. I got back from votes, and I'm laughing to myself because I know all the things I don't do. And that's why I've had an event every year called the Delicate Balance, for women, but really it's hard to get the balance, because there's so many things and people pulling on us, no matter how liberated we think we are, like Felicia said, you have to train people. No, I'm not the cook. I'm not the waitress. I'm not the maid. I'm not the, the take out the garbage person. And what I tell my husband, I'm not I can't find my, then I'm, doing that. So thank you three so much. The parts I heard, you were fabulous, just absolutely fabulous. And hopefully those listening got a lot out of what you said, but we really, really appreciate it. I just wanted to bring up one thing. On March 10th, we're doing another series on vaccine hesitancy, and it's called Making It Plain. And it's the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus Health Brain Trust, which is me, and then Black Coalition Against COVID-19. And they will answer any question that people have. In fact, members of the CBC are turning in their questions that they keep hearing so they can get right to the answers. But fabulous doctors from all over. And then Marcella Nunez-Smith, who's the chair of the COVID-19 Health Equity Task Force, will be speaking also. So I just wanted to get that out there. It's March 10th, and it's, let me see, 6 o'clock to 7:45 Central Time. So 6 to 7:45 Central Time. But thank you all again. Believe it or not, I have to run to it. I know you believe it. I run to another Zoom because I know you guys have to do it too. So thank you, Miss Karen. I didn't get a chance to greet you. So mwah.
Thank you very much.
You guys, thanks for everything you're doing.
Be well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, just had to bring in Congresswoman Kelly. So I know we're supposed to be heading out like in a couple of minutes. It's supposed to be over at 7, but you guys are still talking. I had a couple of questions. I'm not sure. Only thing I do want to ask about, how about our audience? What can people who are tuning in today at home or in their workplaces or in their spending decisions help? With their resources, helping women in the pandemic in the workforce. How can we uplift each other daily in our communities? What do we do at home to help out?
I think trust, respect other Black women, protect other Black women. I mean, it's, that slogan, I don't know why it's controversial. It still seems to be very controversial, but I, again, go back to the ways in which we can be the person in our organizations or in our community, on our blocks, wherever we are, we can really start to be that beacon for other Black women and really create this network of women who have who really do have each other's back. I mean, I don't know if Sharita or Karen said this earlier. I don't see other Black women as my competition. Never have. I will do whatever I can to support another Black woman. And often do that like quietly behind the scenes in so many ways, just to that's only known between me and the other person, right? But I'm gonna get biblical for a minute and go back to the thing earlier that someone said about, your achievements and your accomplishments. There was this part about your light, letting your light shine in the world, not hiding that light, not hiding your commitment, not hiding your love for your community, your love of other Black people, right, of Black women, and letting that really lead you. And it goes back to the comment that I think all of that Sharita and Karen both said about, being your own authentic self. No one else is you. And that really is a superpower.
I think that part of it is that we have to care for one another. I know that, in times, sometimes you have to kind of retreat and take care of home first. And you don't have to apologize for doing that, because if your home isn't straight, then that means somebody else is going to have to pick up that slack and take care of it as well. But as much as you can, be an advocate for someone that has less than you. Be an advocate, and use your voice for these issues that we're pushing out, even if they don't impact you individually, because they still impact the community. So don't be afraid to use your voice. And then also understand that you are unique and no one else can fulfill the destiny that you have but you. So if you don't do the work to show up, to walk your purpose and to be on your path, that means that we're going to lose out on something. We're going to lose out on that gift. We're going to lose out on that plan. We're going to lose out on that idea. We're going to lose out on what it is that you are meant to provide the world. So don't waste your time in pettiness. Don't waste your time in being trivial. Be that person who wants to live out their purpose, and like Felicia said, be that person, be your sister's keeper, basically, and make sure that you're there for someone else. And if you're doing that, then all of the other things will fall in place. You'll do the right things. Felicia talked about in another panel that we were in, is like, tip your manicurist, tip your hairstylist. They struggling, tip them. Even if you haven't had a chance to go, you can pay them. And I love that she says that, because it's so true. Doing that, we're all in this new Twitch world. The DJs have the cash out. Send them something in the Cash App for a cocktail or whatever the case may be, because you are enjoying their services. Whatever the case may be, show up for someone else.
Yes, sure. That's what I'd say. Do not be the reason why another woman has her own pay insecurity issues. Like all of the women who are providing you care and service, pay them equitably, y'all. There are way more women in that economy than there are covered by government or corporations, and we all have a stake to play. I don't pay the sisters or what they are worth for the care that they are giving. Like if we don't value that care ourselves, then we're demanding Congress and corporations and policymakers value that care. I'm just gonna bring that to Sharita. Oh, girl, you know you hit on my subject. Bring that right back home. We have to walk it. We have to walk it like we talk it. And that one right there.
I cannot top the advice that they have given at all. All I can say is here, ditto. Proud to know you all, proud to count you as colleagues.
Well, I want to thank you very much. This recording, we recorded the panel, so this will be available on Congresswoman Kelly's Facebook page and on her YouTube channel. And then we're going to send you all a link also.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you
Thanks
all.
everyone for checking in, for your comments. Thank you all.
Thank you all. This was a great way to end the International Women's Day.
Yeah.
It's still Women's History Month, so I know that Karen, Sharita, and I have a lot more engagements before this is our
You'll see us
month.
around.
Indeed. Be well, everybody.
Be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.